friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lauren, you may also call me Lo, and today I'm bringing you my 5-star predictions. So thank you so much for being here. I hope you're doing well, and let's get on into it. I have 11 5-star predictions here, which is a lot. If you've been watching my channel for any amount of time, you probably know that I don't give out many 5-star ratings. So one way that I've kind of used to pick these out is books by authors that I've given 5-star ratings to in the past. I think that that's a pretty good bet for me. So I think 7 of these are by authors that I've read and really enjoyed in the past. And then 4 of these are by authors that I've never read before, but I do just kind of have a great feeling about them based on other people's reviews and based on my own kind of tendencies with giving out 5 stars. I tend to give a lot of 5 stars to adult high fantasy books. So all 4 of those books are adult high fantasy books. So without further ado, the first book is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. I read the Broken Earth trilogy before I started BookTube and absolutely loved it. It's one of my favorite series of all time. I gave book 1 and book 3 5 stars, and I gave book 2 4 stars, and I absolutely loved that series. So obviously I'm really excited to continue reading N.K. Jemisin's books. I've also read a short story collection by N.K. Jemisin called How Long Till Black Future Month, and some of the stories I really enjoyed and some of them I didn't like as much, so I ended up giving that one a 3-star rating. But that is kind of how it goes for me with short story collections. I tend to really love some and not really like some, and I usually land on a 3-star rating for those. So The City We Became, I believe, is a duology, or will be a duology. I don't think the next book is out yet, but I could be wrong about that. And this book takes place in our world, but in this kind of version of our world where somebody basically embodies every major city. And in this book we're following, I believe, 6 people who live in New York City who begin to discover that they embody their specific New York City borough. And I guess in this story, New York City ends up with 6 of these kind of people who embody the city. I don't really know like what the plot of it is necessarily, but yeah, it says every great city has a soul. Some are ancient as myths, and others are as new and destructive as children. New York City, she's got 6. So I'm very excited to read it. I've heard amazing things about it. I've also heard that it's really good as an audiobook. So I may pick it up as an audiobook. I usually avoid fantasy books and like science fiction books as audiobooks because I kind of get lost and confused when I listen to them, but maybe I'll try this one as an audiobook. Who knows? Next is another N.K. Jemisin book, and that is The Killing Moon. This book is also part of a duology. The second book is out, and that is called The Shadowed Sun. The Shadowed Sun. This is a high fantasy book, and it takes place in an ancient city where there are gatherers, who are people who kind of collect the magic of the sleeping mind from people, I guess, who are sleeping. And that magic is used to kind of heal people and do various other magical things in this society. And one of the most famous and like prolific gatherers in this city becomes aware of kind of corruption within the gatherers and within this society, and that knowledge basically challenges everything that he currently knows. Something that's interesting about N.K. Jemisin, or at least something that was present in the Broken Earth trilogy, is just like a very difficult to explain plot that you kind of discover as you go along. So in the 5th season, you spend a lot of time kind of just reading and trying to absorb what's going on, and it all eventually makes sense, but you are confused for a good length of that book. And I think that this book might be similar. It's got a fairly vague premise, so I think it might be similar to that one, but regardless, I obviously loved the Broken Earth trilogy, so I'm very, very excited to dive into this one. Next is the one, the only, Brandon Sanderson, and the first book I have here is Warbreaker. This right now is a standalone. It's an adult high fantasy, but I believe Brandon Sanderson plans to continue this series. This one says, Warbreaker is the story of two sisters who happen to be princesses, the god king one of them has to marry, a lesser god, and an immortal trying to undo the mistakes he made hundreds of years ago. Theirs is a world in which those who die in glory return as gods. A world transformed by biochromatic magic, a power based on an essence known as breath, which can only be collected one unit at a time from individual people. But it's worth it. By using breath and drawing upon the color in everyday objects, all manner of miracles and mischief can be performed. So again, fairly vague summary, kind of like what I was saying with N.K. Jemisin. Brandon Sanderson's plots are often very difficult to explain for me, and I think that that's part of the reason that the summary is quite vague. But I'm very excited to read a Brandon Sanderson in which there's like a magic system surrounding colors. That just sounds fascinating to me. I also really, really enjoy the way that Brandon Sanderson writes his female protagonists, so I have a lot of faith that I'll really like this one. And so far I haven't given any Brandon Sanderson books less than 5 stars, so it's a pretty good bet that I'll really, really enjoy this one. Next is another Brandon Sanderson, and that is Mistborn. This is a YA fantasy that I again have heard nothing but good things about. This seems to be, I think, Brandon Sanderson's most popular series, maybe besides the Stormlight Archive. I'm just really, really excited to dive into this one. I read YA quite a bit, but I was slightly put off by the fact that this is YA because when I bought this book, I had only read Adult by Brandon Sanderson and absolutely loved his adult books. But I recently read Skyward, which is a YA sci-fi, and I adored that. I gave it 5 stars. So I have no doubt that I'll absolutely love this one. This one I've heard described as kind of the story of what happens if the bad guys already won. I am going to read the summary of this one like I did for the other one because I have no idea, again, how to try to explain it. This says, once a hero rose to save the world. He failed. For 1,000 years since, the world has been a wasteland of ash and mist, ruled by the imperial emperor known as the Lord Ruler. Every revolt has failed miserably. Yet somehow hope survives. Hope that dares to dream of ending the empire and defeating the Lord Ruler. A new kind of uprising is being planned, one that depends on the cunning of a brilliant criminal mastermind and the determination of an unlikely heroine. A teenage street urchin named Vin. Where a hero rose to save the world and failed, can a young heroine succeed? It sounds so good. It sounds so good. And I've heard nothing, honestly nothing but great things about this book. So I have no doubt that I'll enjoy it. I am in the middle of a couple of Brandon Sanderson series at this point, so I probably won't get to this one super soon, but when I get to it, I know it'll be a 5 star. Next is a relatively new discovery of mine, and that is Niveau. I read The Empress of Salt and Fortune relatively recently, absolutely loved it, easy 5 stars. I have yet to continue that series, but I have 2 more Niveau books that I'm very, very excited about and think there's a good chance will be 5-star books. The first of those is The Chosen and the Beautiful. This book follows Jordan Baker, who grows up in kind of socialite 1920s society, and she's queer and a Vietnamese adoptee. And it says, the world is full of wonders, infernal pacts and dazzling illusions, lost ghosts and elemental mysteries. In all paper is fire, and Jordan can burn the cut paper heart out of a man. She just has to learn how. This is Nivo's debut novel, which I didn't know. And it says that it reinvents this classic of the American canon as a coming-of-age story full of magic, mystery, and glittering excess, and introduces a major new literary voice. Niveau has very lyrical, beautiful, kind of magical writing, and I'm excited to see how magic kind of plays into the story of this book, but I do think that I'll really love it because I'm just Nivo's biggest fan now. And the second one by Niveau is Siren Queen. This book follows Lu Li Wei, who is a Chinese American girl who wants to be a Hollywood actress. But in Luli's world, the worst monsters in Hollywood are not the ones on screen. The studios want to own everything from her face to her name to the women she loves, and they run on a system of bargains made in blood and ancient magic, powered by the endless sacrifice of unlucky starlets like her. For those who survive to earn their fame, success comes with a steep price. Luli is willing to do whatever it takes, even if that means becoming the monster herself. I've heard amazing things about this so far, and I'm just confident I'm going to love it. I love Neva. I love her. So, last book by an author I've already read from and have already given 5 stars to, and that is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book is on my summer TBR, so I expect to read it very, very soon. I'm also just such a fan of this cover because I enjoy surfing, and I mean, look at it. Okay, so this book takes place in Malibu and follows the somewhat infamous Rivas family. Nina Rivas, one of the Rivas children, is planning on throwing this huge party that's supposed to be the party of the year, but the party ends in a fire. Before that first spark in the early hours before dawn, the alcohol will flow, the music will play, and the loves and secrets that shaped this family's generations will all come rising to the surface. Malibu Rising is a story of one unforgettable night in the life of a family. The night they each have to choose what they will keep from the people who made them, and what they will leave behind. I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I think like over 2 years ago now. I gave that 5 stars. I cried 2 separate times reading that book. I absolutely loved it. One of my favorite books of all time. And I also read Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which I didn't like as much, but I did really enjoy. I gave that one 4 stars, and I have high hopes that this one will live up to my very high expectations of Taylor Jenkins Reid. Next are the 4 books by authors that I haven't read from yet, but that I have a lot of confidence that I'm going to really love. The first one is a book that I've owned for an excessively long time and still haven't picked up, and that is The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. There are 3 trilogies in this series, so 9 books total, but the series can be compartmentalized into 3 smaller series of 3 books each. This is the very first book in all of it. The kingdom of the 6 duchies is on the brink of civil war when news breaks that the crown prince has fathered a bastard son and is shamed into abdication. The child's name is Fitz, and he is despised. Raised in the castle stables, only the company of the king's fool, the ragged children of the lower city, and his unusual affinity with animals provide Fitz with any comfort. To be useful to the crown, Fitz is trained as an assassin, and to use the traditional magic of the Farseer family. But his tutor, allied to another political faction, is determined to discredit, even kill him. Fitz must survive, for he may be destined to save the kingdom. People absolutely love Fitz. Steph recently devoured this series and absolutely loved it and vlogged the whole thing, and she just made me so excited to pick up this book. I believe Reagan has also read this and absolutely loved it. And I'm just really, really excited to get started with this series. I just think I'm going to absolutely love it when I finally pick it up, but I've owned this for multiple years. Next is a book that I think everyone's already read, once again, and that is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Everyone is talking about Babel by R.F. Kuang, which is her brand new book that I think comes out in a couple of months, but people have been dying to get their hands on that arc. And while I'm very excited to read that book when it comes out because everyone is so excited about it, I want to read this series first because it's R.F. Kuang's first series. It's the reason everyone is so excited about that other book. When war orphan Rin aced the Keju, the empire-wide test to find the most talented youth to learn at the academies, she surprised everyone. Test officials, the guardians who wanted to marry her off and further their criminal enterprise, and even herself. But being a dark-skinned peasant girl from the south is not easy at Sinagard, the most elite military school in Nikon. Targeted by rival classmates for her color, poverty, and gender, Rin discovers that gods long thought dead are very much alive, and that she possesses a lethal, unearthly power, an aptitude for the nearly mythical art of shamanism that could be the weapon the Empire desperately needs. While Nikara is at peace, its enemy and former occupiers, the Federation of Mujin, bides its time, and a third Poppy War is just a spark away. Rin's shamanic powers may be the only way to save her people, yet as she discovers more about the god that has chosen her, the vengeful phoenix, she fears that winning the war may cost her humanity, and it may already be too late. This book is supposed to be pretty brutal, and I've heard that it delves pretty deep into substance use, but I am very, very excited about it. I think I'm absolutely going to love it based on other people's ratings, and I have very high hopes that this will be a 5-star book. Next is another book that I've pretty much heard no bad things about, and that is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. This is a standalone, which is so exciting. I'm so excited to read a high fantasy standalone. I have a couple on my shelves, but it makes me so much more likely to pick it up since I don't have to commit to reading a whole bunch of books. And I believe this book was self-published, which is really awesome. On a mountainside at the edge of the Kaigenese Empire live the most powerful fighters in the world, warriors capable of raising the sea and wielding blades of ice. For centuries, the fighters of the Kusanagi Peninsula have held the Empire's enemies at bay, earning their treacherous spit of land the name the Sword of Kaigen. Born into Kusanagi's legendary Matsuda family, 14-year-old Mamoru has always known his purpose: to master his family's fighting techniques and defend his homeland. But when an outsider arrives and pulls back the curtain on Kaigen's alleged age of peace, Mamoru realizes that he might not have much time before he has to become the fighter he was bred to be. Even worse, the empire he was born to defend might stand on a foundation of lies. Misaki told herself that she left the passions of her youth behind when she married into the Matsuda house. Determined to be a good housewife and mother, she hid away her sword, along with everything from her days as a fighter in a faraway country. But with her son asking questions about the outside world, the threat of invasion looming on the horizon, and her frigid husband grating on her nerves, Misaki finds the fighter in her crawling its way back to the surface. I just have such incredibly high hopes for this book. People seem to pretty much universally like it. My friend Heather did not, but she's the only one. Still, regardless, really want to try it, and I think there's a great chance that it will be a 5-star book. And last but not least is a book that I hauled very recently, and I said in my last book haul, which is the video before this, that I thought this would be a 5-star book. So naturally, it's going to be included in this video, and that is The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. The Omehi people have been fighting an unwinnable fight for 100,000 years. Their society has been built around war and only war. The lucky ones are born gifted. 1 in every 2,000 women has the power to call down dragons. 1 in every 100 men is able to magically transform himself into a bigger, stronger, faster killing machine. Everyone else is fodder, destined to fight and die in the endless war. Young, giftless Tao knows all of this, but he has a plan of escape. He's going to get himself injured, get out early, and settle down to the simple life: marriage, children, land. Until those closest to him are brutally murdered, and his grief swiftly turns to anger. Fueled by thoughts of revenge, Tao dedicates himself to an unthinkable path. He'll become the greatest swordsman to ever live, a man willing to die 100,000 times for the chance to kill the 3 who betrayed him. So I guess the first thing that made me think that this would be a 5-star book was just the sheer amount of people who absolutely fell in love with this book, but also it's got kind of a revenge plot, which really reminds me of The Name of the Wind, and I absolutely love that book. That is one of my favorite books of all time. So I think if this book can kind of compete with that, I'll really, really love this. So that is it for my 5-star predictions. I will check back in with you once I've read all of these books to let you know what I actually ended up thinking of all of them. But before that, they'll all be included in wrap-ups. So if you're new to my channel, please consider liking and subscribing. I put out 1 bookish video every week. sometimes 2 if I can pull it off. If you're still here, thank you so much for being here. I always really appreciate it, and I will see you next time.